Good evening, Grobble fans. It is I, Keaton White, and beside me is the self-proclaimed again, as I say, wearing his Daddy t-shirt, Big Daddy. And today we're bringing you episode 2 of the Big Daddy and Son podcast of the Crabtrees. And we're going to be taking a deep dive into everything about the Crabtrees, everything about their special careers. For you, those of you who don't know, the Crabtrees are one of the most prominent British wrestling families, or maybe even just one of the most famous British families. Obviously, maybe behind the royal family. I suppose the royal family of wrestling in Britain. You know, Max Crabtree, Brian Crabtree, Big Daddy, Shirley Crabtree Senior. They all had like at least one kind of skill in wrestling.
Keaton, the Crabtrees were just as nearly as big as the royal family in Britain.
They got quite popular.
Now they were popular. Okay, they were popular in the entertainment business of wrestling. Were they as big as the royal family?
Well, they're kind of the royal family of British wrestling. Like, name a more prominent British wrestling family.
The Finleys.
Right, they're good, but you know, we're not gonna.
The Hearts.
British wrestling.
Oh, British wrestling.
See, can't think of anyone.
And also, I said that Jan Haystacks was from Scotland.
Yep, and he was not.
My bad.
But anyway, from the first episode, and we're going to get to the Crabtree soon, but we just want to interact with some of the fans. So from our first episode of the first bell, where we've done a bit of introductions, and I introduced this guy, and you know, we're bringing loads of comments because this is kind of like a fun interactive thing. So, and while we were talking, we were trying to get people to name their top 4 British wrestlers. So we're going to bring out some of them. So Scottish British Wrestling says congratulations on the first episode, Keaton, of your new podcast. It was really enjoyable. Thanks very much for that.
That was really nice.
I'm glad people like that. So the top 4 wrestlers of Scottish British Wrestling, I think it's quite a good list. Mark Rollerball Rocco, Marty Jones,
2 of the best, yeah.
Dynamite Kid, and Dave Finlay. I think that's a good list.
Couldn't argue with that.
Okay, and Michael Hill says his 4 favourite British wrestlers are Pat Roach, Danny Collins, Burt Royal, and Marty Jones. Another good list.
Pat Roach, yeah. He was in a TV programme, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's how he kind of got famous. You know, he's known for being a TV bomber, Pat Roach.
There were builders who went to Germany, weren't there?
Yeah.
Of Wiedersehen Pet. Yeah, he was a big lad. Did he sort of gingery hair?
Yeah, well, more of a gingery beard.
Yeah.
He had that kind of royal gimmick. So Timothy Cross, I think he cracked the Jew. I've said this before. He's not a genius. He claims he is. He claims he's a genius, when really he's not.
I wouldn't really claim I play this game, but realistically, Keaton is the guru when it comes to wrestling. I'm here just as a supporting act.
And you said, and this self-proclaimed genius of British wrestling says he knows it all. This know-it-all says the Jan Haystacks are from Scotland. So Timothy Cross, thank you, Timothy, for finally bringing some realisation to this podcast. Says Jan Haystacks was from Salford, not Scotland, even though he was built as Loch Ness when he wrestled in America. Thank you very much.
I think that's where. Thanks for that, Timothy. I think that's where I got confused. When he went to America, he was billed as Loch Ness. Now,
You didn't even know that.
It didn't last that long. Oh, it did. That's why I got. That's why I got confused. That I thought he might have been Scottish, like the Loch Ness monster. I'm guessing that's where that gimmick came from. But I'm happy to be stood corrected.
And then Chris MC says my Mount Rushmore of British wrestlers would be Rollerball Rocco, Marty Jones, Johnny Saint, and Dynamite Kid.
Yep.
See,
Can't argue with them.
I think you have to add Johnny Saint and all of them, but I want to thank all the viewers for watching this. You know, this is what it's for. It's just to bring back nostalgia of British wrestling for all the people who are watching it. And I'm glad everybody enjoyed it, so a lot of people found it enjoyable.
Who were yours?
So it could have changed today because it changes quite a lot for me.
Mm.
So Johnny Saint would be one of mine.
Yeah.
Johnny Saint, Adrian Street. I think Big Daddy, even though he wasn't the best in-ring wrestler, not very skilled, would be on that list. So because he kind of popularised it, and Mark Rollerball Rocco, that'd be my top 4.
Yeah, I like that. So, guys, we're here today, and we're going to be talking about that one of those people there you mentioned, Big Daddy.
Big Daddy, surely.
Probably the greatest entertainer the world of wrestling has ever seen. Big Daddy, most talented wrestler ever to come out of Great Britain, and the absolute genius behind the name Shirley. Where are we going to start with this one? So we want to talk about the Crabtree family?
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll start with maybe maybe one of the lesser known ones. Brian Crabtree, but he was really a jack of all trades in wrestling. He was a former wrestler himself. A lot of people probably didn't know that, but he was a former wrestler himself. He was a ring announcer, referee. He done lots of different jobs in wrestling.
He was Big Daddy's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All three were brothers.
He was a wrestler to begin with, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
What happened to his career?
So he suffered a very serious injury in the middle of a match, and it stopped him from wrestling again, which is quite sad because he was really good. But he's mostly known, he retired years ago as a professional wrestler, but he's known as a master of ceremonies,
Yes.
things like that. But
Yes.
So he's more known after that, and not at the time where Big Daddy was ruling wrestling and Max Crabtree. It was more at the time where he was wrestling before that, but then when he came in, that's when he became a ring announcer, referee. It was jack of all trades of the Crabtree family, in my opinion.
And Brian, obviously, everyone will look a bit thin beside Big Daddy, but he was a fairly thin guy he'd receding sort of hair, nearly gone baldish. But he was the spokesperson then, so he was the man who introduced everybody. And he had a wee sparkly number as well when he came out, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But
so that was Brian Crabtree, yes.
Yeah, but beyond introducing people, Brian Crabtree obviously wrestled himself beyond introducing and refereeing, and he was really, really incredible wrestler in the ring. Like most of the Crabtree family, he got into wrestling, like Shirley and Max did. He got into wrestling through the Master of Ceremonies.
Mm-hmm. And taking it back.
And the National Service.
So he was, during them days, everyone went for National Service. Any idea what that is?
Yeah, it's from the war.
Yeah, so, there were wars happening, which was terrible, and people sort of 18 and above, I think, had to go and fight for Great Britain in the war. And Brian, Max, Shirley, they all had to go and they call it conscripted, and had to go and fight for Great Britain in the war.
And this, which is quite sad, but this is when wrestling was more ruthless when Brian was wrestling, so he was an incredible wrestler in the ring, and I hear so much good stories about him. Some people say he's the best wrestler out of all the Crabtrees, which I think could be pretty true.
I read that it was a Hungarian wrestler who injured him so badly that he could never ever wrestle again.
Yeah, it was a Hungarian wrestler, and he could never wrestle again. This was when wrestling was so much more ruthless. Maybe when Big Daddy was going around, things were bad, because I'm not going to get into too much detail because we could talk about this on another episode, but King Kong Kirk incident. So wrestling was dangerous, but before the kind of all in wrestling, it was really way worse. And that's maybe would have been easier for Brian to sustain an injury against a Hungarian wrestler. And the sad thing was he was never able to wrestle again.
Yeah. Now, the question is, if anyone's watching or listening, please tell us, do you know the name of that Hungarian wrestler who put Brian Crabtree out of the wrestling game, but he stayed in it and was a massive influence? He was a massive influence, wasn't he? Even though he wasn't wrestling, he was a referee for a while. He was the Master of Ceremonies, and I'm guessing he played a part behind the scenes too with Joint Promotions.
Oh yeah, he 100% did. He's still well known in wrestling. He probably didn't expect to be after that injury, but yeah, he became really well known, which is good for him and for the Crabtree families, thanks to Max. But yeah, he was an incredible wrestler in the ring, and then obviously he became a part of Joint Promotions, the largest promotion in the United Kingdom, but obviously not wrestling. So we later joined his brothers in the 70s. Yes,
yeah, it was the 70s.
Yeah, the 1970s. That he later became a referee. So he's more known for being a referee. But whenever Max couldn't ring announce, he was the ring announcer.
Okay, so Brian was initially a wrestler. He got injured. He ended up refereeing, and then became the main compere, the main Master of Ceremonies. Okay.
Yeah, so it was whenever some of the wrestlers couldn't referee. And this is a story here. This is a really, really interesting story. You'll not know this one.
Yeah.
So he would have refereed a lot of matches when Max couldn't referee, or not Max, some of the other guys, and Max would ask him to referee.
Yeah.
So a lot of wrestlers would actually refused to go in the ring with Big Daddy because that was his brother. Whenever Max was refereeing.
Really?
Yeah. Kendo Nagasaki, Peter Thornley, I've got his book there, was known for. So when Brian was refereeing, there's Big Daddy there, Shirley Crabtree.
Yeah.
So Brian Crabtree was known more for the ring announcer, but whenever he had the referee, he would have done it. But Kendo Nagasaki, one of the greatest British wrestlers to ever do it, the masked man, the mysterious Kendo Nagasaki, would have wrestled against Big Daddy. He actually refused to wrestle against Big Daddy whenever Brian Crabtree was there. I've never seen his book here. Yep.
And you got it signed, didn't you, by Kendo?
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's a treasured item.
It really is. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so... And he actually refused to wrestle Big Daddy whenever Brian was refereeing because he thought there would have been biasness.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Dutster?
I can understand it. You know, when someone's family or the referee, then you could get accused. He was taking it easy on me. He let him win. And I think in the wrestling world, if the main organisers in joint promotions were the Crabtrees, did they play a part in Big Daddy becoming so big?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. But again, I can't... They're a very controversial family in British wrestling.
In what way controversial?
Because when you think of incredible wrestlers in the ring, would have said that there was a biasness between Max Crabtree and that he only made Big Daddy famous because he was his brother. But these, in my opinion, this is my opinion, these guys wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for Big Daddy, because halls wouldn't be packed around the world. They wouldn't be seeing wrestling on TV so much because it would be if Big Daddy wasn't there. So with Max Crabtree, he done something that was good, and that was popularity. He made Big Daddy popular. So these guys wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Big Daddy. So
yeah, I suppose. Well,
that's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, I suppose when you think about it, some of them, like, would Big Daddy have been there if it wasn't for the Big Brothers? Something that some of us didn't know, and I certainly didn't know until I looked into this. Brian Crabtree was an actor, and he held an equity card.
Yeah, he did. He was in a film called No Bridge Grass.
Okay.
No Bridge Grass.
Okay, and he was also in
The Wild Bunch.
The Wild Bunch, yeah. No Blade of Grass in The Wild Bunch. Haven't seen the films, I must say, like, but might be worth finding them online and see if we can get a watch at them.
But after he couldn't wrestle again, he never really took any bumps. Obviously, could have been too dangerous. But he took one bump, and that was when he was refereeing against Mighty John Quinn. Do you know Mighty John Quinn?
No.
Well,
sorry guys.
Genius here, absolute genius. So he was refereeing against Mighty John Quinn, and while he was refereeing against with Mighty John Quinn, when it was Big Daddy versus Mighty John Quinn, this was a really famous match. He was knocked down by Mighty John Quinn, and he had to take a bump. So that was another bump taken by Brian Crabtree, which must have felt good for him. I know when you talk about taking bumps, it wasn't really good, but when you talk about, you know, not being able to wrestle again, and you get to take a bump in the ring and you get to be involved in it, must be feeling incredible for Brian. So he got involved quite a lot with refereeing, ring announcing, whenever Max Ward obviously couldn't referee. So yeah.
So there was another brother then, Max. So you've told me about Brian Crabtree. You've told me about a little bit about Big Daddy. You can tell me more about Big Daddy. Tell us about Max. Who was Max Crabtree?
So Max Crabtree was one of the most prominent, I suppose, the most influential in my opinion,
right,
of the family. So Brian Crabtree was the owner of Joint Promotions. He took over Joint Promotions, and he was really incredible promoter. Obviously, what he done, and when he got World of Sport on the televisions, he created masterminds like Kendo Nagasaki. Booked so many great wrestlers, which we'll talk about in the future. So he booked many famous names, and he made household names as well. As you know, there's Big Daddy, who's still talked about today. Yeah. Giant Haystacks, Kendo Nagasaki. Yeah.
So Max Crabtree, was he the main booker?
Yeah, he was the main booker. He was the owner.
Yeah. And would he have been the person responsible for bringing in people and saying you're good enough or you're not good enough, we're going to get you on TV?
Yeah. He was the top dog.
So if someone, let's say someone from Northern Ireland wanted to get on TV in wrestling, would they need to contact Max?
They would, yeah.
Okay.
And while we talk about that, I want to give pair respect and Kung Fury Hamill.
Yes, very sad news that one of Northern Ireland's greatest and World of Sport's greatest and great British wrestlers has passed away, sadly.
One of the most famous names, household names in British wrestling. Had the pleasure of interviewing the guy, getting to come to his house and interview him. He kindly welcomed us into his house. What a lovely man he was. Yeah. Such an incredible guy, such a nice guy. A gentleman in and outside of the ring. And he will forever be remembered in wrestling. So
yeah. He was one of the guys who did the high flying moves before most of the others.
Yeah.
So he was very recognisable. He had a white suit, he had a black and white mask. Did he have a reddy pinky mask as well?
Yeah, once, yeah.
Yeah.
So seeing that you grew up in World of Sport wrestling, what are some of your memories of Kung Fu?
Yeah, I can clearly remember him. Now, I was probably your age and younger, but I can clearly remember him. I can vaguely remember him wearing those shoes, being barefoot. And as I say, he was mostly dressed in white. Good looking man when they took the mask off. But he took no nonsense. He flipped all around the place and stood up to anyone in and out of the ring.
Yeah, so one of the most feared men in all of British wrestling, Les Kellett. One of the most popular ones. Les Kellett got a backstage confrontation with Kung Fury Hamill because he was slobbering about the place like he always did in locker rooms, and Kung Fury Hamill says, "Come on, me and you outside now," and he refused to fight Kung Fury Hamill because Kung Fury Hamill stood up to him. But after that, they became very good friends, and they were forever friends. You love Les Kellett?
Yeah, Les Kellett was awesome, but here he was a pretty hard man too.
Yeah.
But fair play to Eddie Hamill, because a lot of people would have just sort of backed away and not said much to Les Kellett, but Eddie Hamill stood up to him.
So rest in peace, Kung Fury Hamill.
Yeah.
Forever be remembered, never forgotten.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do a bit on Eddie Hamill at some point. Maybe down the line we'll do another wee episode. But back to the Crabtrees then. Tell us a wee bit about the career then. We've got Max Crabtree. Was he a wrestler?
Yeah, he got involved in wrestling. Like all the other Crabtrees got involved in wrestling after the national service along with his brothers.
Okay. And he then brought in a load of top wrestlers. Name us some of the people that he brought through.
These names are big here. So Fit Finlay, who's a WWE legend, who's trained the likes of John Cena and Randy Orton. And he, former United States champion himself, he went on to do big things in WWE. He's brought in the likes of big Fit Finlay. He's made household names, as I said there. And Sammy Lee, who...
Sammy Lee, I remember Sammy Lee.
So someone you won't know, Sammy Lee went as Tiger Mask years later.
Tiger Mask, yes.
And Tiger Mask was one of those famous luchadors, but a lot of people didn't know that he was Sammy Lee. So back in the day, him and Big Daddy would have done a lot of tag team matches together. He would have used the British Bulldog as young David.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the biggest household names that he was part of actually creating the gimmick. He was part of creating the persona of his brother, larger than life Big Daddy.
Yeah, and he brought Big Daddy out of retirement. You know, Big Daddy had an initial gimmick. I don't know if you know this. He was a guardsman gimmick.
I read that. Now, he was in one of the forces, the guardsmen of some description, and he was one of the battling guardsmen. So that was his gimmick. And I suppose the people you've interviewed before, how do you actually come up with a gimmick?
You know, you just turn yourself up to 1,000. And Big Daddy was a guardsman.
Yeah.
I've read lots of books about him. He was a guardsman, and he used that gimmick. But if he still continued with that gimmick, this is another what if? Would British wrestling be where it is? Probably not.
Good question. Who knows?
He was just one of the names. But again, Max Crabtree created another household name in his brother, and he also created Lex of Adrian Street.
Yeah.
But some other people might not know is William Regal used to wrestle for him. There was Dynamite Kid. There were so many.
He was the main man behind Joint Promotions. He was the hirer, the firer, the booker, the person who came up with the storylines.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
And he was the main man, and so he was behind, I'm guessing, 20 years of Joint Promotion shows.
Yeah.
And before that, he was involved in another company, was he?
Yeah, well, he was, yes. Because he didn't plan out, but Dale Martin Promotions.
Oh yes.
He was planning on doing stuff at Dale Martin Promotions, and then the guy who he was doing it with later died before it was happening, because they were trying to do something to compete and get British wrestling to TVs. But then Joint Promotions kept going in his ear, telling him, "Come on, join us," and because he was only well-experienced promoter, because he was promoting for years before that, and he's only well-experienced promoter, he had no choice but to hire Max Crabtree. So Max Crabtree joined Promotions, and yeah, they wanted something to compete with Joint Promotions, but he became the owner of Joint Promotions, and that's what led to World of Sport Wrestling.
Okay. And there was a rise in Stampede Wrestling, there was a rise in New Japan.
Yeah.
And well, I'm not sure everyone was behind the Big Daddy gimmick.
I think so.
No. From what I've read, a lot of people weren't too keen on it, but from what happened, Max Crabtree stuck with it and promoted it. He made it larger than life. He got all the sparkly gear, and he had the different songs, and the crowds loved him, didn't they, Big Daddy?
Yeah. But again, maybe the wrestlers didn't love him. A lot of the wrestlers really didn't like him.
Really?
Because they felt like he was taking their spot. But in my opinion, if he was taking their spot, it wasn't their spot to take.
So was there a bit of favoritism, a bit of nepotism for Big Daddy because his brother was the big booker?
Listen, if there was, in my opinion, if there was or there wasn't, he made a household name out of Big Daddy. And if there was nepotism to his brother, he made a household name out of Big Daddy, and he made British wrestling where it was because of that guy.
Without the Crabtrees, there probably wouldn't have been the British wrestling that we knew and loved.
Yep. So,
okay. So that's Max Crabtree, former wrestler.
Yep.
Bigger behind the scenes than in front of the camera. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, he would be. He was
probably the most influential out of all of the guys.
He was a well-known ring announcer and stuff, and referee.
Okay.
But more known for ring announcing.
So he brought in his brother Shirley.
Mm-hmm.
That's not his sister, his brother Shirley. I believe back in the olden days, you know, let's say before the war, Shirley was more common for a male name, believe it or not, and then later on it turned that it was mainly a female name. Anyway, there was a country and western singer, you mightn't know this, Keaton. It was a man called Johnny Cash, and he sang a song called A Boy Named Sue.
Right.
We should have listened to that before the podcast here. But A Boy Named Sue was all about this daddy who ran out on the mummy and left the mummy with the child, and the daddy called the son Sue, and Sue was a girl's name, and this guy in this song called Sue ended up getting bullied and beat up all the time, and had to learn how to fight, had to learn how to stand up for himself. And I believe that Shirley Crabtree, who became Big Daddy, was bullied. I believe that Shirley Crabtree was given a hard time because of being called Shirley.
Yeah, so now Big Daddy, yeah, you're right, he was in school and stuff, so he'd get called names and all for having a female name like Shirley. But because he was Shirley Crabtree Jr., his father was called Shirley, but that wasn't his. I believe Shirley was a male name before, so that wasn't as bad. But he wanted to follow in the footsteps of his father. But originally, Big Daddy, maybe he wouldn't even have seen Big Daddy, because what he done was he really liked wrestling because he wanted to follow in the footsteps of his father, and he wanted to do rugby. He done rugby as well.
Oh,
so
yes.
he'd give up wrestling for a while and went to rugby and was expecting to be a rugby player. But he was so hard, like, because he was so big, he was so hard, and he would have attacked so many people and just threw them to the ground, and he would have been sent off. And it went to the later point where Max Crabtree went over to him and says to him, "This isn't working out for you, go to wrestling."
And was he hurting people in the rugby?
Yeah, because he had left wrestling.
Yeah.
And he went back to wrestling. He said that was his thing, and he was, believe it or not, Big Daddy was called a decent amateur.
Really?
A decent amateur wrestler.
That was as good as it got for him, a decent amateur wrestler.
Yeah, and you know, he won a couple of amateur championships, I believe, and he was originally going to be a handsome gimmick.
Okay.
So the blonde, kind of like the blonde Adonis.
Oh yes, that's right. I remember reading that somewhere years ago.
So he was going to be the handsome gimmick instead of before he put on all the weight.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going to be like one of the wrestling's pretty boys, you know, like Ric
Yes.
Flair or Buddy Rogers.
Uh-huh.
But it later led to Big Daddy's toughness and being so big in the ring that he became Big Daddy. But little did he know he'd become this popular.
He was popular with little children, and they would have followed him out. You would have heard the song. Can you remember what the song was, Keaton?
We shall not be moved.
We shall
Big
not
Daddy and
be
Titanic
moved.
Survivors.
And all the kids would have came out behind him. Hundreds of them all cheering and loving it to get even a little bit of limelight. But it wasn't just kids that loved Big Daddy, was it?
Nope.
Pensioners,
Yeah.
old grannies, everyone loved him for whatever reason. Because initially when he first came on the scene, he partnered with Giant Haystacks. They were both a tag team,
He did,
and they were really, really nasty. They were the worst heels in the game back then, and it seemed to be going well for them. They put bums on seats, didn't they?
Yeah, it did. But before all the Big Daddy stuff kicked off, you're right. He was a big heel.
Yeah.
So if you watch it back, maybe at this era, it'd be so cool to see them two teaming together, because it's just such a strange thing to see, because they're already known after it for being Big Daddy was the face and Jan Haystack was the heel.
Yeah.
But Big Daddy won a lot of titles through his career as well.
He did, yeah.
So, for being a big household name, you wouldn't really expect him to only have one title in joint promotions. So you had the European Heavyweight Championship. So you won that championship and joined promotions, and then he won the even in the Independent British Wrestling Federation. So he won the Independent British Wrestling Federation Championship before he quit.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Big Daddy won a lot of championships and amateur championships before he became put on the weight a lot and didn't go as fast as he would have before. But that paid him off. Not done a lot for him.
It definitely did. As I say, he sold, if there was a venue that had Big Daddy in it, that was being sold out because Big Daddy was there. And I suppose after the split between Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy, the two heels of the day, the giant heels of the day, it probably took a while for the fans to turn around and, and see Big Daddy as a face, as a good guy.
Yeah, it probably did, but it paid off for him a lot, so thankfully he still stuck to it.
Yeah. So it was like 1977, he completed the turn to become a blue eye, that they called it back then. What do we call it today?
They call it faces today, but yeah, they were recognised as blue eyes at the time.
Yeah.
And then heels were still called heels.
Yeah. There was a feud with Kendo Nagasaki during that period, and for the first time since his comeback, he entered into this feud with Kendo Nagasaki. Did Kendo Nagasaki refuse to fight Big Daddy many times?
Yeah.
Why was that?
Well, one of them was because of Brian Crabtree. Remember we were talking about that one with Brian Crabtree refereeing?
Yes.
Because he believed there was a lot of biasness.
Yeah. Big Daddy did something that you don't do to a masked wrestler.
Yes.
What was that?
And he tried to take off Kendo Nagasaki's mask.
Yeah. And, now there's a big drive with luchadors, and there's a company called AAA in Mexico who are a big part now of WWE, and it's nearly sacrilege to take off a luchador's mask. And in some countries, the likes of Mexico, if you take off a luchador's mask, there's like a punishment for losing the mask, and it's to shave off all your hair, and you've got to, some cases, even leave the country. It's crazy, but apparently that happens in some of these federations.
But yeah, and there's something that a lot of people might not know here. So he was a short-term wrestler, but Big Daddy's nephew actually got involved in wrestling.
Oh.
He went as Greg Valentine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
And was he good?
Really good, yeah. Steve Crabtree, aka Greg Valentine. So he competed against King Kong Kirk and Kendo Nagasaki. And there's a lot of bad things that happened at that point, but his nephew was also involved in wrestling. Unfortunately, the legend that was King Kong Kirk in the ring died after Big Daddy's splash.
Yeah, I watched a couple of documentaries about that, and from what I've heard, King Kong Kirk had a heart attack already that day, and
he did.
His heart was already deteriorating to a point where he was sadly he was likely to be passing out and possibly dying. So maybe all of that.
Yeah, even without that splash, he probably would have died anyway. So you're not going to put the blame on Big Daddy, obviously. And even if he did, it was not his fault.
Now a lot of people did at the time. It was on the news, and a lot of people said it was Big Daddy's fault. And I certainly don't believe that it was anybody's fault. It was terrible. But King Kong Kirk was another massive wrestler, and a lot of those massive wrestlers will put a lot of strain on their organs, and unfortunately, in this case, it was after Big Daddy's splash that it was probably coincidence as well that King Kong Kirk passed away after that match. Terrible.
But after that point, after King Kong Kirk's death, I'm sure Max Crabtree would hold him to keep coming up to the appearances, but Big Daddy was devastated, so devastated here. It was obviously an awful thing, and you could imagine the guilt that Big Daddy felt, and it wasn't Big Daddy's fault. But even if you done that, or if anyone else done that in the ring, you'd feel guilt.
Yeah.
And of course, you'd feel a lot of guilt, and this kind of stopped him from making as much appearances. But he still kept up the appearances after that. He just didn't really feel it no more. But
so he still wrestled after that.
Yeah, in the 1990s. But then in the 90s, that's when he retired from wrestling. In his 60s, so he kept a wear and tear of wrestling until he was in his 60s, which is very good. So without the Crabtree family, we wouldn't be talking about this podcast. This podcast wouldn't exist without the Crabtree family.
Yeah, I suppose so.
British wrestling wouldn't be where it is without the Crabtree family.
Yeah, there's a fair chance of it. Yeah, so I'm guessing Big Daddy was devastated, and Big Daddy then, I'd imagine he probably took a step back from wrestling for a while, but someone's maybe talked him back into it. Was Max still around?
Max was, yeah.
Yeah.
Max
So-
died a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So would he have talked Big Daddy and back into doing a couple more shows?
Yeah, because without Big Daddy, there's no bums on stage.
Okay.
So, and the Crabtree family, being beyond their personal life and stuff, the Crabtree family will never be forgotten, in their British wrestling days. So his brother Brian, a well-known amateur wrestler who competed in lots of different tournaments and got injured by a Hungarian, and later became very well known around British wrestling for refereeing, ring announcing, and what was probably one of the voices of British wrestling with some of the ring announcing that he done. And Max couldn't make it.
Yeah, and you won't remember these, Keaton, because you've never really been into gaming as much as
No.
Keaton now has. What is it, an Xbox or something? Or
PS5.
PS5. But back in the day, there was a thing called an Atari. There was a Game Boy was the sort of like the most up to date thing that I had when I was a kid. And Big Daddy was in one of the wrestling games back in the olden days. It was like 19.
What wrestling game was this?
It was called Legends of Wrestling 2, and it was out in 2002. Big Daddy had a retro figure released then as well, and it was made by
I know that.
Shella Toys.
Yeah.
So, and here it is, one more time. So yes, so that's a little bit about the Crabtrees. Guys, we are certainly no experts in this world, so if you have any stories or any information that you'd like to share about any times you've been lucky enough to meet any of the Crabtrees or at any of the shows, please put them in the comment section below.
So yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I've been the expert, the genius, the encyclopedia, the goat of knowledge of British wrestling. Who's British wrestling fan knows more about it than this old man's era of wrestling. And yep, I've been the Kid of Rock, Keaton Whiteside. This has been self-proclaimed Big Daddy, old man. Yeah. So thank you
And
very
in
much.
the style of Kent Waltman,
Have a good Saturday. Till next week.
see you again next time.